I am a huge fan of Supernatural. I own every season on Blu-ray, and I have even a giant poster hanging up in my room from the show. So when I learned that it was ending, naturally I was sad, but also relieved because I genuinely don't think that any show should go on for 15 years, even if I really love it like I do Supernatural. The problem is, I didn't know how it was going to end. And now that it's finally over after an extremely long break because of the coronavirus, I can now definitively say that the ending was a mixed bag. Let me elaborate on that point. Season 15 picks up right where 14 left off, with hell broken open and everything from a woman in white to a killer clown walking free on Earth, and I was excited, to say the least. I really do like Season 14's finale. There are some problems with it suddenly pivoting to God as a villain, because that does feel a bit out of nowhere and out of character with him from Season 11, but it was the final season, so I was really looking forward to a season full of stopping everything they'd stopped before, and fixing what God did in the Season 14 finale. I was so excited and so curious about how big of a story it would be, and how massive it would be, and how big the stakes of the final season, and it's finished in 3 episodes. Okay, I guess I should be happy that it took longer than the season premiere, but Supernatural has always kind of done this 3-episode arc thing before moving on to other episodes. I don't really have a problem with it. In fact, I kind of like it because it makes the first 3 episodes really feel like a movie, especially when you binge it, but they usually don't resolve the entire season arc in 3 episodes. That being said, I don't think these opening episodes are awful. They just don't really do what I wanted them to do with the storyline. Episode 1 has some nice homages to the show and features some fun returning ghosts. Like I mentioned, the woman in white and a killer clown. Even Bloody Mary returned with some hit or miss VFX, but she was cool too. And episode 3 is actually a pretty satisfying conclusion to this opening 3-episode arc, with the death of Rowena and some really cool moments with Belphegor that maybe feel a little out of nowhere. I don't know, this man could have been a season-long villain. I would have been okay with it. Episode 2 is kind of boring, and I think that it's the weakest part of the 3-parter. It's not too bad when you're binging it, but when I first watched this episode, I really didn't like it. It just does this weird thing with bringing Kevin back and then saying that God sent him to hell, and now he's escaped. He's gonna do whatever he wants to reconnect with his mom. On paper, I would say this is a good ending, but we already got a really good ending with him in season 11 when God sent him to heaven. So to retcon it and say that God sent him to hell out of nowhere is just such a stupid decision, and one that really does hurt the episode for me. It just also doesn't really progress anything. You could probably watch episodes 1 and 3 of the season and get the entire story of these opening 3 episodes without needing episode 2. I guess another issue that I have is that nothing ever really feels tense. They bring back these huge ghosts that they fought before, presumably they've all come back, but then they just don't do anything with it except confine it to one small town in Texas and then wrap it up in 3 episodes. Lack of tension is a huge defining trait of season 15, and maybe that's just a side effect of going on for 15 seasons, but even in seasons like 11 and 13 and 14, there's some tense moments in the storylines I actually kind of care about. There's really good bits in there, and I still feel like something bad's happening. Throughout the entirety of this season, it's never tense or feels like anything's really going on. It's present in these opening 3 episodes, and it's present at the end of the season when they literally defeat God. It is insane how little I actually cared about anything going on because the show failed to make it seem as big as it probably should have. I just don't understand the rationale between not only confining everything to one small town in Kansas, but also to wrap everything up at the end of these first 3 episodes. The season could have been really cool if you go from episode to episode where they have to hunt old things. That'd be such a brilliant way to get some Monster of the Week episodes out of this instead of just recycling old ideas in such a boring way. Now literally have them fight somebody that they fought, maybe 1 for each season. That's 15 episodes of content right there. It's insane how little they tried. It's like they wrote the cliffhanger and then decided, yeah, let's get out of it in the quickest way possible. It is such an utter disappointment and such a terrible way to start out the final season, and I honestly just have been disappointed ever since these first 3 episodes. After this opening arc, we do get a kind of neat period of 2 episodes where Sam and Dean feel like they're free. I will admit, while I do wish this storyline did go on past 3 episodes, the idea of the boys thinking they don't really have to deal with anything for a time is a nice change of pace, and it does add a lot of build up and almost feels like tension for the season. They also start something interesting with Sam having visions again. Each one seems to be another Earth or another ending for the series, and all of them involve Sam killing Dean or vice versa. The problem is they don't really do anything with this at all. It all builds up to a really awesome mid-season finale with the return of Michael and an episode that really feels like there may be some tension and reason to care. We have Michael helping Sam and Dean, and we get a lot of cool stuff with Michael and Adam, who we haven't seen in literally like 10 seasons, and it's so cool. They set up a way to trap God, similarly to the way he trapped Amara back before time itself. And the scene where Dean and Cass learn they have to go to purgatory is so awesome. The episode ends with Sam getting kidnapped by a weakened God, as the two are connected by the bullet hole from which Sam shot God. And I did really think that we were setting up for a really solid second half of the season. Unfortunately, just like the opening arc, this season drops everything it established with its mid-season return, episode 9, The Trap. Sam's bullet wound connection to God is removed and the visions stop, and now God is all powerful again. Get ready for some awesome episodes, right? Well, unfortunately not, because the next 2 episodes are dedicated to Sam and Dean struggling with being normal because God removed their plot armor. This is a pretty funny meta idea, I'll admit, and I was willing to roll with it until they said that without God, they don't have hunting abilities to hunt monsters. The idea that God gave them abilities to hunt over 15 seasons is not only stupid, but completely destroys the series up until this point and undoes over 15 years of stories and character development. Thankfully, the following episode basically acts like God just hit them with a spout of bad luck, and the idea that they're shitty hunters without his involvement is completely pushed aside, and I can act like it was a bad idea that never actually existed. So thanks for that. Utterly a waste of 2 episodes, because this never comes up at all throughout the rest of the season again, and it just feels like an aborted storyline. Speaking of that, once episode 12 rolls around, we're thrown into another storyline. This is like the 4th storyline of this season that could have been an entire season. Jack is back and he's ready to kill God, and at the same time God is killing every infinite Earth that he's created. Both are pretty cool ideas, I guess, but I realize this is when the biggest problem with the season, other than the tension, started. They cycled through 4 plots now, like I said. A ghost apocalypse with everything they've killed being released, cool. Sam getting visions of alternate ways the story ends and them having to trap a weakened God, very cool. Sam and Dean having no plot armor and having to deal with it, less cool, but alright, I guess. And now they have to kill God. All of these things could be final seasons that are pretty solid, and I would genuinely enjoy a lot of these plots, but they keep doing them all in one season and they're paced terribly. It's all one right after another, so the season has this weird stop and go momentum that it never truly feels like one solid story. It gets even worse when they drop the killing God plotline and it never really goes anywhere. In episode 17, Unity, a really cool episode that I actually love, by the way, God reveals that he can't really be killed and he was manipulating everything to get the ending that he wanted. And while this twist is really cool and I do really love this episode, it's still another instance of them dropping a plotline. Now all of the previous episodes where they were trying to kill God make no sense because he could never be killed in the first place. They then moved to set up another thing with having Death as a primary villain of the season with 2 episodes to remain, where they say that Death wants to kill everyone that's ever been resurrected and reset everything to how it should be, with angels in heaven, demons in hell. What's dead should stay dead. Really cool thing, and I think it's awesome to have like maybe a one-off episode where they have to kill Death. And then in episode 18, Despair, another episode that I really like, it has a lot of great tension like the season should have had, they drop that plotline and say God's gonna kill everyone, and he does kill everyone, ripping off Infinity War to do it. At least Cass had a unique death where he confesses his love and confirms a ship that has been queer baited for literally 10 seasons now, only to go to mega hell.
I love you.
Really cool. I do genuinely love this scene though. It's probably one of the most well-written character deaths in the entire series. It's really good. So now both episode 17 and 18 feel like they could have been storylines that could sustain at least a part of the season, and they just completely drop them and completely zigzag through. I guess the only difference between these episodes and the prior ones is that I think these are really strong episodes. I just wish they would have done more with the concepts. Unfortunately, we haven't even talked about the biggest example of this entire problem yet. Season 15, Episode 19, Inherit the Earth. Supernatural Season 15 basically ends with Episode 19. It's the season finale. It ends the meandering and unfocused storyline with one of the most bizarrely paced, confusingly written, and downright baffling episodes of television I have ever seen. It starts with everyone being gone and it just being Sam, Dean, and Jack, which is alright enough, a cool premise, and after about 10 minutes we get them recruiting Michael to help. Again, cool. And then Lucifer returns, says he's here to help. He creates a new death since the Empty killed the last one, and then turns on them, kills the new death, and then Michael kills Lucifer. All of this happens within 10 minutes. I count it. After this, they come up with a random plan to kill God, only for it to be revealed that Michael sold them out, and then God kills Michael. This is completely random and undoes whatever anything cool with this character might have been established when they brought him back, but I digress. After this, God beats the literal shit out of Sam and Dean, and then Jack shows up and then sucks God's life force away. And they just leave him as a man in one of the few really, really good scenes in the season. I actually really love this scene a lot. The episode then continues with Jack leaving as the new God, and Sam and Dean return to the bunker as a montage of the past 15 seasons commence, and I am absolutely confused about what the fuck I just watched. This was like 5 episodes of TV in a single episode. We could have had an entire episode with Sam, Dean, and Jack on a lifeless planet, an entire episode with Michael returning and helping, an entire episode with Lucifer showing up and being a menace, and then we could have had a big fight with him and Michael, and then have Michael help against God, and a really cool finale. Instead, we get all of this crammed into one episode, and if it sounds confusing, I'm not poorly explaining it, it's just poorly fucking written. They cram so much shit in, and I like so many ideas in this episode, but they never have enough time to fucking breathe that it feels like whiplash just even recounting what goes on in the episode. It also doesn't help that it barely follows up on so many things set up literally 2 episodes before. Chuck and Amara fuse at the end of episode 17, and a really cool scene as Chuck is basically now the Alpha and the Omega. However, nothing comes of that, and he feels no different in episode 19. I genuinely thought Amara would fight back or something to help them defeat God, but they don't do anything. Even after Jack absorbs all of God's energy, he just mentions, yeah, Amara's with me, yay. It just feels like she was a complete waste to even include in the season. I hate that they don't even really mention Castiel besides one scene where Dean says he died. Literally, there was so much character drama and development that they could have gotten out of one single scene between Sam and Dean talking about it, even with Jack included. Jack and Castiel were so close. Really, it's like the only thing that was actually built up and remembered and felt set up was Jack absorbing energy from plants and trees and things in the prior couple episodes. So that's one thing, I guess. And yet again, there's no tension. I don't care about anything that happened because they just plow right through it. So many things happen that don't get mentioned again as if everything is completely normal, and I don't care. I really wish that I did, but this is one of the most lackluster season finales. It felt more like an outline of the final few episodes of the season than the actual final episode of the season storyline. It also feels like whoever wrote these last couple episodes, episodes 17, 18, and 19, did not read the scripts for the prior episode and just wrote whatever the fuck they were wanted to write. The season is so cluttered, it has so much going on, and it at the same time has too little going on because they never give anything enough time to really develop. It feels like everything's starting and stopping every other episode, and it concludes on the worst season finale that the show has ever really had, and it's one of the most tonally jarring and inconsistent seasons of the entire show, to the point that it confuses me to even talk about that. But after the season finale, we still had one more episode, the series finale. And thank God I actually liked that. Supernatural series finale is really great. Is it perfect? No. Is coronavirus to blame? Partly. The series finale is a completely safe and at times uninspired ending for the show, but I did like it. It's absolutely the expected outcome, it's just not the execution that I expected. I entirely expected Sam or Dean to die at the end, I just didn't expect them to go this route. But I kind of do like it. What I pictured was Dean dying to God to save the world, but what we got instead was Dean dying on a routine hunt and sharing his final moments with Sam in a really awesome scene. I genuinely do love what comes next too, having Sam living out the rest of his life, and it made me emotional. And while the one scene with the wig is awful and some of the music choices do suck, it did make me teary-eyed to see the two reunite in heaven, and having the original Bobby return was so great, and I do genuinely love the final shot. It's not a perfect finale, and I'd again love to have seen Castiel at least one more time, even if he died, but I get that they couldn't do that, and I am still satisfied with how it ended. I just wish the season as a whole ended as strongly as the series finale, because I did walk away absolutely content. I did get a little carried away, so now I'm going to talk about some stray thoughts here and there. Firstly, I think that Eileen's return was actually handled pretty well. Her relationship with Sam is a little forced at times, but at the end of the day, I actually like it, and I'm just going to pretend like they confirmed it was her who Sam had a family and a kid with at the end of season 15, because they didn't show it, I presume due to the coronavirus. But yeah, I enjoy Eileen's return. I really like her character, and when she died in season 12, it was pretty upsetting to me because it just felt like a complete shock value death, and her resurrection's pretty cool, and it's in one of the cooler episodes of the season, so good on them for doing that. Also, as far as returns go, Lilith's was completely stupid. They set her up in episode 5 of the season to be like this recurring antagonist, which was kind of cool. I like that God brought back a season villain, like an actual season villain. Kind of shows how there's this power imbalance now with having literally God as your villain. But then they kill her off in the next episode she appears in, and it just kind of harkens back to the issue the season has had at large, which is bring back, set up, end. Bring back, set up, end. They just keep dropping every plotline, and it just doesn't make any sense. Lastly, the season has an extremely large amount of like one-off episodes, which isn't unusual for Supernatural, but I feel like as far as the past few seasons are concerned, there were a lot more in this one, especially just mediocre ones. There's like a couple episodes that I just cannot stand watching. There's one where they fight a Baba Yaga right as shit's about to go real, where Death herself literally shows up and is like, hey, you guys have bigger things to think about. But there are some fun ones, like ones where a wood nymph appears in the bunker, and I like that one. But yeah, I just think it's insane that in the final season, when there's supposed to be a lot of things going on in tension, they have a lot of one-off episodes, which I guess does go back to my tension complaint. But that's about it as far as my minor thoughts that I didn't really have a place for in the video itself. This video may just seem like a giant rant about how much I dislike season 15, but there are a lot of bright spots. There's some really awesome episodes in this season, and there are a ton of great ideas still, but half the episodes feel soured by the end because they're never really followed up on. Michael's return is really cool in episode 8, Our Father Who Aren't in Heaven, but then they completely undo it and Inherit the Earth. All of episodes 17 and 18 are really dope, but they feel wasted and useless in Inherit the Earth. A mediocre season of television could be made good by a solid finale, but a weak and struggling season can also be killed by a bad finale. And I feel like season 15 is the latter of those. It doesn't help that the season also has 2 absolutely dreadful episodes within it. Both episode 7, Last Call, and episode 13, Destiny's Child, are some of my least favorite episodes of the whole show. Last Call is a complete waste of time as Dean revisits a stupid old friend on a random hunt for no reason at all, only for the literal last 5 seconds of the entire episode to be important at all. It's probably the worst episode of the season and one of my least favorites of the entire show. Destiny's Child is a cluttered mess, like several episodes worth of ideas shoved into one with no time to breathe. Sound familiar? Yeah, it's because it was written by the same writers as Inherit the Earth. Really, the only difference between the 2 episodes is I think the ideas in Inherit the Earth are good. Meanwhile, I find the ideas in Destiny's Child to be trite and stupid. I really wish that I could say that even though season 15 is some of the worst of the show, it has some of the best, but I think that I'd be lying if I were to say that. Even if I do love some of the final episodes, none of them are series best, they're just solid Supernatural. And I wish that I could say the season as a whole was solid Supernatural, but it's more like mediocre, bottom of the barrel Supernatural. Is season 15 the worst season of the show? I genuinely couldn't tell you, but I do know that it sure as hell is not one of the best. It's on the lower end, and I really do wish that I cared more. It's just such a muddled and confusing and frustratingly meh season that is made even worse by my mile-high expectations that I had entering it as it's the final season of one of my favorite shows. At the end of the day, it's probably something like around a 6 out of 10. I still enjoy it because I enjoy the show, and the lack of truly bad episodes, aside from 2, prevents me from putting it any lower. It's not as creatively bankrupt as like season 9, and its main plot isn't stretched out to baffling proportions like season 10. I think it's much more in line with messes like season 6 and 12. The saddest thing is that Supernatural ends off its 15 season run with a resounding meh. And I guess it could have been worse, but it could have also been far better. Join me next year in 2021 as I'm going to talk about the entire show as a whole and a pretty neat retrospective. Until then, I'll see all of you guys later.